Proteine sein, der es mir nicht verzeihen kann, dass ich die marxistischen Parteien vernichtete. Aber mein Freund, ich habe die anderen genauso vernichtet. Sie sind
Throughout history, power has brought about some of the best and some of the most evil leaders known. While some leaders wanted to improve the quality of life of those they led, other leaders only sought their own interests. Their selfish quest led to gross abuse of power, resulting in the murder and destruction of countless lives. In fact, it will show you a countdown of the most brutal, horrific, and despicable world leaders in history. Number 10. Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein's rise to power in Iraq was swift and brutal. Within days of taking power in 1979, he purged his rivals within the Ba'ath Party, setting a dark tone for his 24-year rule. His ambitions led him to invade Iran in 1980 and Kuwait in 1990, both wars proving disastrous for Iraq. The Iran-Iraq War dragged on for 8 years, claiming hundreds of thousands of lives. Despite these failures, Hussein clung to power through ruthless repression, unleashing violence against minorities groups like the Shia and Kurds, resulting in the deaths of tens of thousands of innocent civilians. His reign of terror finally ended with the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Number 9. Idi Amin. In 1971, Ugandan General Idi Amin seized power in a bloody coup, fearing corruption charges. His brutal 8-year rule plunged Uganda into chaos. Ethnic cleansing, mass executions, and widespread corruption became hallmarks of his regime. He expelled tens of thousands of East Asians and targeted specific ethnic groups within the military and wider society, leading to countless disappearances and murders. Dissenting voices were silenced, often dumped in the Nile River. Eventually, his brutality alienated key allies, leading to his overthrow and exile in 2003. Number 8. Hideki Tojo. As World War II loomed, General Hideki Tojo consolidated power in Japan, becoming prime minister and wielding immense influence. He instilled fervent nationalism in young people and infused Japanese society with a belief in racial superiority, paving the way for years of brutality against those deemed inferior. Tojo's regime unleashed illegal chemical and biological weapons in China, subjected POWs and civilians to forced labor in brutal conditions, and even authorized horrific human experimentation through Unit 731. By war's end, Imperial Japan bore responsibility for the deaths of nearly 30 million civilians across East Asia and the South Pacific. Arrested after the war, Tojo faced a military tribunal and was ultimately executed for his crimes. Number 7. Mehmed Talaat Pasha, once Minister of the Interior for the Ottoman Empire, practically ruled the nation even before being named Grand Vizier in 1917. However, his reign is deeply marred by the persecution of Armenians. Fearing an Armenian independence movement, Talaat ordered the arrest of influential Armenians in Constantinople. Many were deported or killed, sparking a widespread massacre. Despite Turkey's denials, the evidence is clear. By the time Talaat was assassinated in 1921, estimates suggest nearly 1 million Armenians had lost their lives in this systematic campaign of violence. Number 6. Augusto Pinochet. In 1973, General Augusto Pinochet rose to power in Chile through a US-backed military coup. While he publicly portrayed himself as a reformer, leading the country towards economic stability and free market principles, Pinochet's regime implemented brutal policies characterized by widespread human rights abuses. Thousands of political opponents were detained, tortured, and even killed under his rule. The exact number of victims remains debated, with estimates ranging from 2,000 to 4,000 murdered and over 35,000 arrested and subjected to horrific mistreatment. Number 5. Leopold II. Leopold II of Belgium, known as the Builder King at home, earned a far darker moniker in Africa, the Butcher of the Congo. While he ushered in reforms in public works in Belgium, his rule in the Congo Free State was marked by horrific brutality. Using a brutal mercenary force, Leopold's regime imposed quotas on the local population, often using violence and forced labor. Estimates suggest a staggering 10 million Congolese died under Leopold's rule. Number 4. Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong led his communist revolutionaries against the Imperial Japanese during World War II. After the war, he consolidated power in China under communist rule. Over 500,000 dissenters were persecuted. In 1958, Mao initiated the Great Leap Forward campaign to transform China's economy. The transition from an agrarian economy to an industrial powerhouse was wildly successful, but China paid for this success in a staggering toll of human lives. The transition created a countrywide famine. Anywhere between 15 and 55 million Chinese died between 1958 and 1962. Number 3, Pol Pot. Cambodian communist revolutionary Pol Pot dreamt of reviving the ancient and Korean Empire. He attacked Vietnam and Thailand, and in 1975, after a brutal civil war, seized power in Cambodia. In a horrific act of social engineering, he emptied cities and forced everyone, regardless of age or health, to work in labor camps. This devastating period, known as the Cambodian Genocide, claimed the lives of an estimated 1.2 million people. Number 2, Joseph Stalin. While Joseph Stalin's nearly 3-decade rule saw the Soviet Union rise to superpower status, it came at a horrific human cost. Millions of Russians perished, including in the infamous Ukrainian famine engineered by Stalin's regime. The secret police expanded dramatically, turning the nation into a paranoid state where neighbors became informants and millions faced execution, imprisonment, or simply vanished without a trace. Even conservative estimates suggest Stalin caused the deaths of over 4% of the entire Soviet population, leaving a lasting stain on the country's history. Before we unveil our top pick, here are a few dishonorable mentions. Caligula, Rome 37 to 41 C, sadistic emperor reveled in excess of the suffering of his people. Kim Jong-il, North Korea, 1994 to 2011. Instead of feeding North Korea, Kim repressed and starved it. Number 1, Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler's regime in Nazi Germany stands as a horrific low point in human history, fueled by fiery rhetoric and nationalistic fervor. During the Great Depression, Hitler rose to power through intimidation, propaganda, and the subversion of democracy. His hateful ideology blamed Jews for Germany's problems, leading to the systematic extermination of 6 million people in the Holocaust, the most horrifying genocide in history. Millions more, including gays, Poles, Slavs, people with disabilities, and others deemed undesirable, were persecuted, enslaved, and murdered under his regime. Adolf Hitler's regime in Nazi Germany was a time of great suffering for many people. Hitler's hateful ideology led to the systematic extermination of 6 million Jews, as well as the persecution, enslavement, and murder of millions more. Please share your thoughts on history's most brutal and evil dictators below. Let us reflect together on the somber lessons we can learn from their dark legacies.